Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. My name is George Skinner. Essentially, my job today is the moderator of this webinar. So essentially, I'll give you the agenda, talk you through what we're going to be covering today in the webinar. I'll introduce our 4 speakers that will be covering their own independent topics. I'll also be asking some questions in different formats. And then towards the end, we'll open the floor to open questions from you as the audience. So without further ado, I'll continue. Today's webinar is navigating the evolving AML and KYC regimes in the UAE. I want to firstly thank all of our sponsors and partners that have allowed this webinar to come to fruition. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of the next hour's discussion. Today, we've got 4 industry experts with us who will enlighten us on interesting subjects. So firstly, I would like to introduce Ms. Shahana. She is founder and CEO of Alba Group. Shahana, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank George. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In the world of AML safety compliance, I say experience matters. My name is Shahana and I have over 2 decades of experience. I've had the privilege of working with regulators, international banks, CSPs in Mauritius and the Channel Islands. And now I'm the founder of ABLA Group. At ABLA, we are not just sort of another compliance service provider. We are like your independent boutique firm for all your compliance requirements, with a presence in both the UAE and Mauritius. So our experienced team crafts tailor-made compliance solutions, and we excel at guiding clients through the complex web of regulatory obligations. Throughout my career, I've navigated the ever-evolving landscape of AML safety compliance, working closely with financial institutions, regulatory bodies, and organizations. I'm thrilled to share my insights today, my knowledge and practical strategies to help you implement effective AML practices specifically tailored for UAE. So let's embark on this journey together, strengthening our understanding of AML safety and collectively building a safer, more resilient financial environment for the UAE. George?
Great, thank you so much, Shahana. I'd like to introduce our second speaker, Mr. Sharif, who is the Group Head of Compliance and Risk at People. Sharif, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure talking to you today. I am Sharif Afifi. I'm the Group Head of Risk and Compliance in People Ltd. I have been working on the fintech industry for the last 5 years. I have 20 years experience of banking. I have been approved by multiple central banks across the region, and Central Bank of Bahrain, Central Bank of Kuwait, Central Bank of Egypt. Currently, I am building the entire compliance environment and risk for the company using my methodologies and using the best practice on the market, participating with our partners on the fintechs in order to evaluate and in order to increase and improve the efficiency of the fintechs as a payment service providers. I have been even in the board advisory in Kuwait regarding to the corporate governance. My topics today will be one of the hot topics in UAE about the proof of address and why it's important and how we can, especially we don't have a clear instructions regarding the proof of address from the regulators on the entire UAE, either from central bank, from free trade zone regulators. We will deep dive on that. We will give our insights on this and we will give our practice and how we are looking to this area in order to benefit everybody, to write the policy procedure and to execute the solutions. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sharif. Looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that topic. The next speaker I'd like to introduce is Mr. Venki. He is the Managing Director, MENA USA at Ascent. Venki, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Thank you, George. Good afternoon, all, and the esteemed panelists here. My name is Venki Subramanian. I'm the Managing Director for MENA and the United States at Ascent Group. I've been in the financial services industry pretty much all my life and in the region for about 18 years now. I worked in Bahrain in my past life and then in the ADGM for the past 10 years. I'll be talking about mostly what the asset managers or the fund managers and regulated entities who are established either in the DIFC or the ADGM should be looking at from an AML and a client onboarding perspective, and look forward to an interesting discussion.
Great, thank you, Venki. And lastly, but definitely not least, I will be introducing Mr. Friedrich. He is the Chief Operating Officer at Cedar Rose. Friedrich, over to you.
Thanks a lot, George. Thanks everyone else, and welcome to this webinar as well. So my name is Frederick. I work for Cedar Rose. I've been actually working in the risk management industry for a bit more than 10 years between Europe and the Middle East as well. I've been actually the last 6 years in Dubai and the last 3 years at Cedar Rose. So at Cedar Rose, we provide credit and compliance risk management solutions, and specifically with the subject of this topic today for compliance, we provide different aspects like report for investigations in terms of due diligence and get actually a better understanding of the integrity risk of the different third parties, whether they are individuals or companies. And we also offer different solutions to automate the onboarding and monitoring process for the different clients across government, financials, or multiple multinational industries as well. So I'm going to speak about the technologies and how these solutions actually can help compliance professionals within several industries as well. Thanks a lot, George.
Great. Thank you all to our speakers. I look forward to hearing about your topics in much more detail. Before I pass over to you to cover those specific topics, what I'm going to do now is basically just give you an overall understanding of why it is that we are covering this topic today, just to give you some more context. So essentially, the ever-evolving regulatory changes and compliance requirements in today's fast-paced financial world is a challenge. And it's very important for us to stay current. The UAE has strengthened its AML and CFT regulatory environment recently, demonstrating an ongoing commitment to compliance with the FATF recommendations. And the adoption of international best practices is at the forefront of these changes. Over the past 5 years, the country has made significant enhancements to relevant laws and regulations and established committees to improve national coordination and cooperation with the issues that the industry is currently facing. While the UAE has had to address a number of current challenges quite swiftly, the core elements of effective framework to detect and prevent misuse of the financial system by criminals, terrorists, are now in place, and they're being implemented globally. The pace of the change has been quite rapid, and this has been driven by the UAE's government to pursue full compliance with the FATF recommendations. Financial institutions and professionals across various industries operating in the UAE must ensure that AML, CFT compliance programs meet the highest standards of regulatory expectations. Financial institutions and the whole sector have had essentially enhance their compliance and risk frameworks to comply with these AML obligations. This has resulted in considerable investments over the recent years in terms of technology, human resources, through documentation of policies, processes, and procedures. One of the key areas that the UAE aim to improve on, as highlighted by the FATF, is the enforcement of sanctions and prosecution against financial institutions and individuals breaching these regulations. The panel of speakers here today are going to be shedding light on these ever-evolving AML and KYC regimes and what needs to be done by these financial institutions and individuals. Their insights will provide a deeper understanding of the strategies a company may need to implement and navigate this complex terrain. We're going to cover AML laws, best practices to apply to ensure that your organization remains compliant and resilient to the challenges that everyone's facing currently. We will also unveil the importance of proof of address as part of AML and the challenges companies face when verifying addresses under the current regulations. We'll explore the customer onboarding process, delve a little bit deeper into technological advancements, transforming this compliance landscape, and uncover the best practices to ensure that every organization remains compliant. The webinar isn't necessarily just about these panelists sharing their expertise, but it's also about you, our audience, our attendees. Your participation, your questions, engagement are an integral part of this event. Throughout the webinar, we do have some interactive sessions, some poll questions where we'll be asking you to contribute. Without any further ado, I would like to embark on the journey of learning, collaboration, and insight. I encourage you to take notes, maximize this opportunity, enhance the knowledge when we cover this topic of AML and KYC compliance in the UAE. So let's begin. Before we go into the first topic, I am going to hand over to Ms. Shahana, who is going to be covering UAE AML legislations. Shahana?
Thanks, George. So in the highly regulated business landscape of the UAE, there has been strict guidelines as being established. And we've seen non-compliance can result in severe penalties. We have seen so many companies being fined by the regulators in UAE and worldwide for lack of compliance. AML CFT legislation affects a wide range of entities, from financial institutions to businesses across various industries and even professionals. The UAE has put in place a comprehensive set of legislations to ensure that organizations meet their AML safety obligations. These legislation encompass federal laws, such as the Federal Decree Law number 20 of 2018, as well as subsequent amendments like the Federal Decree of number 26 of 2021. Additionally, the Cabinet has issued several resolutions that are crucial for understanding and implementing AML safety measures in the UAE. These resolutions cover various aspects, including the implementation of AML laws, regulations related to terrorism risk, procedures for beneficial owners, and more. One of the notable developments is the recent launch of the Executive Office of AML CFT's website, which provides access to a comprehensive list of laws, resolutions, and guidelines. And you can find these under the Laws and Regulations tabs of the website. At the federal level, you have the Cabinet resolution plays a significant role in outlining the AML safety compliance obligations for financial institutions, DNFBPs, virtual asset service providers, non-profit organizations. Furthermore, you have the federal and local regulatory and supervisory authorities which issue additional rules, regulations, circulars, and guidance to their licensees. Let's say, for instance, financial free zones like the DIFC and ADGM, they have their own regulatory authorities that supervise entities within their jurisdictions. So, in addition to administering that federal AML legislation, the DFSA and FSRA issue rules which financial institutions must comply alongside the federal law. The DFSA has the DFSA AML module, ADGM has the ADGM AML rulebook. Like this, the other regulatory and supervisory authorities, like the central bank, the Ministry of Economy, the ISCA, they have issued their AML guidance and guidelines that you have to follow. So in conclusion, it's essential to understand that AML safety regulations in the UAE, the federal laws, cabinet resolutions, and your regulator AML rulebook or guidances. Compliance with these is paramount, and it's really crucial for businesses and professionals operating in the UAE to stay informed and proactive in meeting their obligations. What we always say is AML CFT is like the vigilant gatekeeper of the financial world. Just like the lighthouse guides ships safely, the AML CFT safeguards the integrity of our financial system, ensuring they remain a beacon of trust and security. Thanks, George.
Great. Thank you so much, Shahana. I want to let the audience know that we have started the first poll question. So if you'd kindly like to participate in that, you're more than welcome to. I would now like to hand over to Mr. Sharif, who will be covering the significance of proof of address and the issues currently faced. Sharif, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Shahana, for this intelligent and amazing topics regarding to the entire AML in UAE. I would like to go through one of the significant topics in UAE currently, which is proof of address. Historically, proof of address that, as per the FATF recommendation number 10 on a customer due diligence, that any financial institution should implement measures to identify and verify customer identity using the reliable independent resources. In line to these recommendations, proof of address became key component of the customer due diligence and the KYC obligations under the AML regime. Proof of address validates the individual physical residential locations, which could be practically sometimes difficult. But let's talk in two ways, in terms of the documentation and policy, and in terms of the reality and how to implement such solutions. Giving to the UAE efforts to strengthen the AML regime in order to be removed from the FATF grey list, proof of address verification has become an essentials to the banks, the governments, agencies, and the regulated entities. Proof of address is one of the elements which significant tool to detect the fraud. Proof of address, it's one of the method which many banks using it in order to identify the fraud behavior, like the address consistency. The address consistency, when the fraudsters may attempt to use fraudulent or multiple addresses to conduct criminal activities, proof of address help institution to ensure that the addresses provided is matched with official records. address consistency in many KYC chain lists as one from the 10 red flags. So if there is any consistency of the proof of address, it considered be a red flag. And there is many KYC chain lists address inconsistency as one of 10 common red flags on AML. On the other hand, proof of address using two methodologies, which is the old methodologies or traditional methodologies and the innovative methodology. The methods which we can use to obtain proof of address, which is old ideas, it's the bank statement, utility bills for gas, electricity, water, internet, letter from recognized public authority, or employer certificates, or house purchase deed. All these documents need to be valid and need to be less than 3 months. Currently, most of the company, even banks, using the same methodology of uploading the document of utility bills, so on, to address this and verify the document using the manual process. This could be more expensive. It will need staff, and with the huge number of transactions, it's not applicable at all. Using the technology of doing proof of address is one of the most cost-effective way. Using something called geolocation data. Implement the geolocation data from smartphones and other devices to validate the individual physical presence in a specific address in real time. Geolocation's data as proof of address, it's time saving, and it's depend on the GPS data, it's depend on IP data and Wi-Fi positioning. This will come in line with FATF recommendations related to digital identity and the opportunity and the challenges of the new technology for the AML and CFT. This is according to FATF. Currently, the geolocation could not be geolocation-based proof of address. It's an effective term, but it could not be approved yet by the local regulators in the entire UAE. However, we're still relying on our efforts to convince central banks and the local regulators of using such technology, even though by providing the advantage and disadvantage of that part, especially that part, and in order to implement, you need to ensure that the kind of data and business must obtain the user consent to meet the confidentiality laws and the data privacy requirement. From my experience using such tool, it will help a lot, along with the traditional way of taking the proof of document as proof of address, or upload the document as a proof of address. This could actually give a secure way that the customer identity is correct and trust for having the relationship with the customer and detect any fraud behavior by using the multiple addresses or changing the addresses in a different way, where it's many fraudsters using such way to take over accounts or to do a criminal behavior. Thank you.
Super interesting, Sharif. I think that proof of address is an issue that everyone within this compliance space has been facing, and to see the other ways that's going to be helping moving away from those traditional methods, seeing those being implemented and adopted is going to be super helpful. Just before I pass to Venki, what I saw was a good question on how to comply with AML as a non-financial institution. So I did just want to pass back to Shahana very briefly. Shahana, would you like to cover that question for me?
Yes. Cover like a bit on the best practices for AML CFT, but there's also a question from one of the participants that we've seen from Raman Abdel, asking how to comply with AML as a non-financial institution. Let's try to cover it, and I hope we will be answering, and I'm sure we will be answering your question. The way we look at it is like a spider, just like the spider meticulously weaves its web to catch prey and maintain its structure. Financial institutions and DNFBPs must carefully design and manage their AML safety programs to detect and prevent any illicit activities. Well, I try to assist you to become the master weaver of your AML safety web, ensuring it is strong, adaptable, and efficient in capturing your financial risk and also protecting your organizations from harm. Money laundering, terrorist financing, proliferation financing, they are not just serious crimes. They have the potential to wreak havoc on your organizations, economies, and the society at large. I see the fight against them is like a collective responsibility, and each one's role is really important in this battle. Well, you might wonder what are the best AML safety practices, and I'm sure like many of us, you have done a Google search to know what to do for you to implement the best practice in AML safety. You would have come across numerous articles and publications around the 5 pillars of AML compliance. However, with recent changes surrounding AML CFT, and now we also have proliferation financing, there is more to it than just 5 pillars. Let's say the foundation of your AML compliance, it begins with your business risk assessment. You need to understand, assess, manage the various risks associated with your business, your customers, your products and services. What you need to take into consideration also is the national risk assessment results for your business. And you have to prepare like a mitigation plan for any potential threats your business might pose. You need to have a robust AML safety policies, procedures, and control. Something we've always told to clients, don't simply copy and paste the regulator's AML handbook or buy an off-the-shelf manual just for you to tick the box of, hey, I have my AML safety manual. You need to craft that AML manual tailored for your business operations, your identified risk and all. Make sure all your processes are really well documented and keep your manual up to date with the ever-evolving laws and regulations. In July this year, we've seen the FSRA imposing a financial penalty of $72,000 on a company after it has failed to maintain an effective AML policy, procedures, systems, and control. So I'm sure we don't want to be in that. What you need to do also is appoint a compliance officer and MLRO with the right qualifications and expertise at senior management level. Those officers, they must have the authority and resources to implement the compliance program, receive the internal reports on suspicions, and conduct their own investigations and report suspicious activities. We've seen in some cases that these roles may be outsourced, but always ensure that the officers have access to the necessary information to be able to deliver on their duties and responsibilities. You need to collect your information for your KYC, understand your customer. You need to do your CDD, your customer due diligence, by performing your checks, ensuring you're not doing business with individuals or entities involved in sort of criminal activities. You have to screen against sanction lists, public records, and do some Google searches on that specific person which want to become your client. Conduct your enhanced due diligence when necessary. You have to monitor the relationship with your client continuously. Look for any sudden changes in their financial activities and always ensure that your CDD is kept up to date. One thing also you need to have is reporting suspicious activities promptly and continuously monitor customer transactions for any sort of unusual patterns. You need to do some accurate record keeping and also maintain your record for the prescribed period of 5 years as this is a requirement. You have to screen your staff, train them on AML CFT and their obligations. We also like one of the best practices, do your independent compliance audit or your annual compliance assessment so that these professionals can sort of provide you an objective assessment and recommendations for improvements in your AML CFT programs. Don't ignore any legacy KYC or CDD gaps that you might have. Do a KYC remediation work. Don't just wait for the regulator to send you a letter, I'm coming to visit you, for you to go and start doing any remediation work accordingly. What we always say is a strong compliance culture starts from the top. So the repercussions of non-compliance extend beyond monetary penalties and legal consequences. Just to give a few examples, in early 2023, we've seen the Ministry of Economy imposing fines worth 22.6 million on the DNF BP sector for their failure to comply with AML safety legislations. In February, we've seen the Central Bank of UAE imposing fine of sort of 1.8 million AED on a finance company due to its recurring AML safety violations. The DFSA in July imposed a fine of $2 million on a company which have failed to meet with various AML safety requirements. We've seen just recently last month, the Central Bank of UAE imposing financial sanctions of 4.8 million on an exchange house for inadequate compliance with AML safety. What we always say is companies must prioritize compliance. They need to establish robust AML policies, procedures, and controls. Continually monitor and enhance their efforts to combat financial crime. By doing so, they not only sort of mitigate the risk, but also contribute to the overall integrity and security of the UAE's financial system. Sorry, George. You're on mute, George.
No worries. That's fine. Thank you very much. I think
George, if you allow me, I would like just to address a comment actually to what just Shahana actually mentioned, because it was very valuable. And I was willing actually to make also some connection with the audience question to say, yes, basically from our experience, whenever you are not a financial institution or a designated non-financial actually business, it's not always easy to understand what are the requirements from actually the authorities into what you need to apply, what actually the minimum requirements, what would be the consequences of the same. What I would actually just say that yes, try actually to be supported by different experts actually that can actually guide you into the different aspects of compliance. But for me, the minimum for any company that I'm speaking to, whether they are clients of Cedarus or not, is actually would be two things. One, to identify who you are dealing with. If you don't know the individual, and actually Sheriff mentioning that only the proof of address, the proof of identity is very important at the same time, but the same goes for a company. If you don't know actually if the company really exists, if you don't know that the company is still operating, for example, that's already a red flag for your business. It's actually very important for you to consider. The second aspect, I would say that the minimum should be actually AML verification. So a quick sanction screening actually on the authority, because You don't want to deal with any sanction authorities. Not because maybe you are actually in the green, you don't worry too much about regulation, whether they are international like from the OFAC, for example. But if actually your bank suspects that there is something as a relationship or dealing with a sanctioned entity, they could just freeze your bank account. And then it's going to be for 1 month, 3 months, more than that. So you're going to be in a very difficult situation. So in terms of if you want to de-risk yourself, that could be actually a good aspect to put in place. If I was just willing to address a few of these concerns raised by some people in the audience. Sorry, your turn, George.
No need to apologize, Friedrich. Thanks for covering that. And Shahana, you made some great points. I think you know, the easy solution is to just go and build your compliance, regs output based on those main pillars, and just complete what is the basic requirements. But it's so important for companies to ensure that their compliance operations are completely customized, completely tailored to that business and their consumers, because there are so many gaps and regulations that are changing so swiftly here in the UAE that if you just go based off the main pillars, you're going to eventually end up with gaps that are missing, which then essentially allow your business to be at fault and almost exposed to those risks that we're discovering. So no, some very, very interesting points. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there is one point I would like to add here. There is a very important, significant philosophy that's owned by all companies, especially startups, need to understand that compliance is not a cost. Compliance is the security valve of the company. When the board of directors understand the concept of the controls functions, compliance and risk, they can tolerate from tone from the top to give the entire company comfortable of using the compliance cultures. Yes, as a compliance, we are all not say against business, but we will sometimes, and in some point of times, we are reducing the business speed. But this is in the long term, it's the benefit of the company. Many startups still don't have that philosophy, and they don't have the culture of the compliance, and they look to the compliance as a showstopper of the business, while in fact, compliance is the most important tool to facilitate business. Especially the regulators is always expecting to have that sort of control over transactions, over behavior, over each and everything. And this is when you are applying for a license in any jurisdictions, they will request immediately for the important two things: risk and compliance, policies and procedures, and corporate governance. Then later on, they will ask for the business plan and how do you expand the blah, and all these, part from any business plan when you are presenting.
Very good point, Sharif. Thank you for sharing. I think, yeah, getting the main people within the organization, the founders, the board of directors, to not see compliance as a cost, see it as an investment, see it as a channel for your business to progress as quickly as possible without being stopped by these hurdles. So, yeah, I completely agree. Thank you for sharing. Slightly later than anticipated, but I'd like to hand over to Venki to cover his topic of onboarding process and know your wallet. So Venki, over to you.
Thank you, George. Hello, everyone again. As Shahana alluded to at the start of this webinar, based on the regulations at the federal level, the Abu Dhabi Global Markets and the DFSI, the Dubai Financial Services Authority, have specific regulations within the financial center for the regulated entities by them, whether it be a asset manager, a fund manager, or an advisory or arranging for credit. Having said that, and being a fund administrator for the past, I think, more than 10 years, what we have seen is the fund managers or the asset managers generally believe that because they are outsourcing the activity of fund administration to a third party, they do not really need to onboard the clients who are coming into the funds or the products that they are selling. And that's been kind of a misconception, or I would say it's just easier to not do the KYC AML process 2 times for the same individual. So what we have seen is that the regulators are coming down very heavy on these particular processes, and the asset managers or the regulated entities have to onboard their clients first, in terms of they are clients of the asset manager first and then an investor into the fund. Yeah. The regulators have both prescribed a risk-based approach. So for doing your customer due diligence and AML, based on the country of their origin, the geographical location where they are, the nature of activities that they do, and whether they are a politically exposed person and so on. There is a risk matrix which can be devised, and you can categorize each of your clients as a low, medium, or high risk client. And based on this risk matrix is what determines how much due diligence or AML you need to do on each of these particular clients of yours. For example, if it is a low risk client and if the entity or the corporation is listed on a stock exchange, then you can do a simplified due diligence and not go on with an enhanced one. However, if the person is politically exposed or politically connected, then the due diligence process is a lot more enhanced, and the frequency of doing that due diligence also increases. Like it's 6 months to 1 year based on the nature of the activities that person does. And consequently, you are also required to collect all the documents which my panelists have already alluded to in terms of identity, KYC, proof of address, and also to certain extent source of wealth and source of funds, which are prescribed by the regulators here. Sorry. Also involved in the process is basically once you have categorized and you have collected all the KYC and your CDD, it is not that it is a one-time process. It's KYC AML is always an ongoing process. The regulators also require the managers to monitor the transactions, and if there is anything which is not in line with the expectations based on whatever client due diligence you have done in the past, then you have to probably flag it. There are other things like reporting an SDR on the GoAML portal and so on and so forth, just in case if there is any fraudulent activity or you believe that the current client is not in line with, is supposed to be or expected to be in a fraud or financed by means which are not in line with the regular activities. Having said all of that, I mean, I believe that whatever we have seen the last 8 or 10 years is that people have still doing it based on paper. All the documents are collected in physical or in PDF form, and then they have to be submitted physically to the fund manager or the asset manager, and then it just leads to extra activity and doing stuff that is not required. So what we have done at Ascent as a group is we have simplified this particular process. We've built an in-house onboarding and KYC AML system, wherein right from signing the documents or subscription form or your onboarding documents to the point where your risk is calculated automatically, The regulators also need you to screen it against sanctions lists, for example, World Check, Edwards Media Checks, and so on and so forth. And to the possible idea of, whenever there is an expiry of any of the documents that have been provided, there is a email chaser which is sent to the individual or the client who needs to submit those documents again on the portal. Now, coming to Know Your Wallet, I'm not really sure how many of the attendees on this call are from a digital asset space. But when you are running a digital asset fund or an exchange or a broker, there is always the risk of getting certain digital assets, for example, a Bitcoin or an Ethereum, from not much of a legitimate source. So Bitcoins have been used in the past by scammers, by terrorists, and everyone else as well. So what this product or the Know Your Wallet thing does is basically, whenever you receive any of these coins through any client or an investor, the system will basically take 20 hops back and screen it against all of those sanction lists in terms of dark net, terrorism, pornography, or any other illicit sources, which makes sure that the coins are from a legitimate source and they are not tainted. That's it from my side, George.
Great. Thank you so much, Venki. I think, again, around the collection of documents, so many people would just assume that you could just automate this process and just make it as efficient as possible. But it seems that, on the other side, that technological advancement has been taken advantage of, and therefore the more traditional ways of collecting hard copies from the individual, verifying those documents, perhaps even going through attestation processes, etc., are still needed to this day, because I don't think that the verification technology is available. It's how that is then implemented and adopted by all organizations. You touched on it, those in the digital asset space are really trying to make moves to have this technology adopted and proceed in this way. But that may not necessarily be so easy for, organizations such as a bank, for example. So I'm interested to see how that unfolds and the type of adaptation of these technologies. So thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Yes. Sorry, just to add on that, George. So what we're also trying to do is basically, you have UAE Pass right now available, and it's a digital form of verifying anything related to government activity and even the banks related stuff. So what we are also trying to do is integrate our platform with the UAE Pass, so that all the data that is collected, basically you can submit your Emirates ID number, and there will be a request sent to your phone saying, do you want to share the data on the portal? And then you approve it, and then we can pull down all the data. So that's something that is work in progress. We have integrated very efficiently in Singapore and in India. So the next is UAE, and hopefully down the line we should be able to do that as well.
Fantastic. So look, I think that moves us nicely on to our next speaker, Frederick, who's going to be covering technology for compliance. So Frederick, if you'd like to give us some even more insight.
Actually, we have received already a lot of insight from the other speakers on this aspect, and I hope the audience is still alive after almost 1 hour of this webinar. But I'd like to start with a story, basically to highlight or remind the benefits of technology in the compliance process. So recently, I had a meeting with the compliance director of a family group in Abu Dhabi, And this group has invested massively in diverse sectors, making it a very good brand within the country or even across the region. And when these new kind of compliance regulations took root in the country, this compliance director approached us. He wanted to know how to follow these rules without using too much time and other resources. And there was a surprise actually here for us, because the entire compliance department of this conglomerate rests on his shoulders alone. He has been responsible for ensuring the compliance for the group, but also for all the affiliated companies. So he told us, obviously, that he feels swamped, especially when bringing new partners on board. So obviously, I was curious, how does he manage? How does he currently proceed for all of these different aspects? And here it is. Basically, for each new party that he was actually onboarding, he dedicates a minimum of 2 full days to manually craft a compliance profile. He uses basic Word document, manually pulls the information from the official papers, does some online Google searches. So what it means is he spends a lot of time, effort on a task that could be made simpler. And considering his role, is likely not earning an entry-level salary either, right? So no, let's just pause actually, and let's try to ponder the magnitude of the situation. First, the time, the effort, and the financial implications of this overall process. And that's where technology can really make a difference. It won't replace the need for human decision-making, but it can really make many decisions actually quicker, more efficient. And so with the right tech tools, you can save time and focus on more important decisions. So let's not try to dive into the world of tech and its role in compliance. And I would like to spotlight a few game changers that I believe will help any compliance team to speed things up. And let's see how these technologies could also be helping these compliance director as well. So the first one would be what we have already highlighted during this webinar, is the digital ID verification. So the different companies of the group receive many applications, individual, corporate, clients, suppliers, but these professional, it want to make sure that is dealing with legit entities, right? So does he need to check manually all of these IDs and maybe even call them to verify some information? Or could he, with a simple click, verify someone's corporate or personal ID, for example, even check the biometrics details and making sure that the business or the person is dealing with is real, right? So that's something that I've already mentioned actually a bit earlier. So two, what's also very important from my experience is the fact to centralize the data. So picture all the data scattered for this compliance director, because he has to search and verify anything to build this compliance profile. Now imagine all of this data coming together in one place, giving actually a 360-degree view of the third party. And that's what centralizing does, basically. It's, in my opinion, a 3-step process. One, you identify the essential AML and KYC data for your compliance needs. So obviously you would keep the UAE rules in mind. You would be, if you don't know what they are, you would be actually supported by an expert on the same. But that would be the first step. Second, then you find out where these data comes from. Can be coming from corporate documents, ID documents, or even third-party data. And then three, you bring all of this data together, and ideally through an API connectivity. But is that enough? Probably not, because after our compliance director has drafted the compliance profile for each entity, it won't be enough, because now what he needs to do is to assess the risk of dealing with each entity and make a compliance decision. Should he consider this entity as a low risk, a high risk? Or does it create the logic between the KYC AML data and the internal relationship details, right? For example, the client that will likely generate 10,000 dirhams of revenue compared to the one that will generate 1 million dirham of revenue over the year should not be considered the same in terms of risk for the business. But that's the thing. It doesn't need to do all of this manually. With tech, it can automate the heavy lifting, cutting out all of these manual tasks and checks that he needs to do. He can have a system that instantly compares the entity details with global watch list, address media. But the best part is not even that one. It's actually that he can also customize his internal risk evaluation approach right into the system and automate some actions. So let's take an example. if a third party for this entity is labeled as a high risk, for example, the system could automatically stop all the transaction by sending an alert directly into the CRM of the organization until the compliance director gives a green signal, because it's also the MLRO of the group in that case. So in a nutshell, I would say that the future of compliance, in my opinion, is one tech-driven, two will be very efficient, and yeah, honestly, quite exciting for Cedaros as well, for example. But there are also other solutions that any compliance professional could use. I'm not an expert into this one, so I will not be sharing too many details. But for example, we know that we have AI and machine learning for transaction monitoring, for example. So you can use advanced algorithm that can be used to detect anomalies, patterns that might indicate suspicious activities. Over time, this system can learn, adapt, improving the accuracy of the detections and reduce the false positives as well. And lastly, it was already mentioned earlier as well. So when it's time to report anything to the regulators, automation can also become your best friend, right? Because with the right tools, you can autofill those AML reports form using the data stored, making the whole process a breeze, and so on and so on. So that would be part of what I'd like to share here with you, George.
Thank you, Frederick. I think you've portrayed the message of everyone within the compliance space, right? There has been some fantastic progression on adaptation of technology, not without its challenges, shall we say? But I think the future ahead of us with the implementation of the tech is going to be good for all parties. So I'm excited to see what's going to come through. I did see some questions mentioning AML training requirements and AML laws. Frederick, are you happy to cover that?
Can you repeat the question just to make sure that I'm actually addressing?
No, so it's just around why AML training is important. You know, the likes of e-learning. How does it help the organizations, etc.?
Overall, the most important is to be aware of the changes of the regulations, right? So these AML training are very important because the teachers or actually the consultant will actually provide actually the latest indication about the laws and regulations, and also actually suggest the best practices implemented by different businesses at the same time. So that's why I believe ongoing monitoring for the whole team within the compliance department is very important. But I guess other speakers might have actually additional details, like Shahana maybe on that regard.
Okay, Frederick, I'll take it from here with you also. George, in fact, AML training is a requirement under the law of UAE, and it is in fact listed in Article 21 of the Cabinet Decision 10 of 2019 that lists the requirements for conducting training programs for employees. Well, we've seen firms like firms telling lots of things for not to give trainings to employees. Some of them even told us once, I know my client well, we don't need trainings, or we are too small for trainings. It's not the time for training now. We are so busy. It's not the time of the year. But there is a requirement for you to do the trainings. What businesses have to understand is financial criminals do not attack a business based on the size of business or client relationship. They just need a way to get their dirty money through the system and to make them out as clean money. What we always say, like AML safety training is indispensable, is an indispensable compass that ensures financial institutions navigate their course with confidence, safeguarding themselves, the company, the economy, and the whole society. With regards to your other questions, George, on e-learning for AML safety, let's agree we all have been to AML safety conferences or trainings, a full day training. How much of it have we really retained out of it? Were we really focused during the whole of the training? I would say no. I have been to lots of trainings myself at times, and you just lost the focus after some time. Why e-learning? It's like really You have to do the course. It is 100% online. It can be completed anytime, anywhere, and at your own pace in a way. So a login detail is sent to the participant. He will have like a month or 3 months, depending on the deadline set by his employer to complete the course. And the good thing with it, you can start it today, pause it, and come back to it after a week, as long as you complete it within the required time that your employer asks you to do. So there is also, like, after that, the participants is awarded like a certificate on the successful completion of the course, and they have to pass a knowledge check also to get that certificate. What we would say is, unless and until every organization contributes to the government plan to combat the money laundering crimes, the country cannot be safe from these crimes. AML safety training is like the beacon of knowledge and vigilance. It is what eliminates the path to the financial integrity and security. So it will help institutions steer clear of the dangerous rocks of money laundering and terrorist financing for us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Hannah. I think
I
Sharif,
have-
did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I have small part regarding to the training. Especially, I have been giving the training some times back regarding to the AML. I can feel that the training, especially for any organizations, could be in two components. One from board level, executive management level, and one board for one component for the operational and the staff, where we need to present real life cases rather than giving academic definitions of AML. The typologies, because every day there is a new way of money laundering and fraud. That's why when we bring people to the table, we need to present real life examples, analyze how the money laundering cycle is happening and in which stage and how we can prevent. This is from part. From another part, I always suggest it's not only about money laundering, it's about the entire financial crime, including frauds and bribery, corruption, because it's all on one plate. Yeah, money laundering is the more focus. However, the financial crime as a financial crime as a methodology, it's the biggest one, which everybody in the organization need to understand the typologies and how to detect and how to prevent and how to report, because this is the culture which we need to put on our staff to understand the importance of reporting issues, whistleblowers, and doing all things to prevent such behavior and to increase the security of the company.
Thank you, Sharif. Shahana, did you have anything else to add on that, or should we move on to the questions?
In fact, Sharif's voice was quite, we grabs a bit and not a bit. So I think some of the participants also couldn't hear you well, Sharif. But I'll try to reply to one of the things that, like, I think someone asked, if not trained, how would the employees be aware of the risk? I would say, like, a company needs to really understand through its business risk assessment what types of risk its business poses as a company to the whole UAE system. You need to devise a training plan, talk to your employees, your compliance officer, your MLO, what are the different sort of training requirements, what are the things you need, and find out. If you don't talk, you don't ask for the trainings that you're needed to carry out your job, you will not get the required training. Always look out for training, find out, and there are lots of articles also on business risk, AML safety audit, or CDD, KYC, that there are really useful articles on LinkedIn that can be helpful also.
Great. Thank you, Shahana. What I would like to do next is I'd like to just conclude on today's webinar. I am conscious of time. I appreciate everyone who has stayed with us an hour in, obviously. So essentially, just a couple of closing remarks from my side. The topics covered were super insightful. Maybe it's just for me. I hope it was for everyone else. But Shahana, thank you so much for covering those best practices, giving insight on how people can look at what is required and then offer tailored solutions. I think Venki, with the Know Your Wallet solutions being implemented in your specific space, the asset management, huge progressions coming through there. Friedrich, again, touching on the technological implementation across the compliance network. And then obviously, and not lastly, Sharif touching on the hot topic of proof of address. It's on everyone's lips at the moment. Everyone I'm speaking to is always speaking about proof of address here in the UAE. So Sharif, thank you for giving such good insights on that topic as well. So look, what I'll do is I'll conclude. Essentially, that was our webinar, navigating the evolving AML and KYC regimes here in the UAE. I would like to sincerely thank you for being part of this discussion. Insights shared by the panelists have allowed us and provided us deep understanding of the challenges, opportunities within the compliance landscape here in the UAE. As we all continue our journey in the world of compliance, remember that staying informed, collaborating, and embracing innovation is essential for growth. As you continue your journey, remember that the knowledge that you gain from other people, I hope today's webinar has contributed to that, will serve valuable resource, for you and your colleagues as well. So on behalf of the team, I'd like to extend, my gratitude, thanks for your active participation. Thank you for participating in the polls, asking the questions, and just generally taking the time to listen to what we had to say today. I look forward to connecting with you in the future. Please feel free to add all of us here on our LinkedIns. We can make sure that you have those links with you as well. But it'd be great to connect with you all. But until then, I'd like to just say, stay compliant, stay informed, and keep striving for excellence and keep pushing the UAE in the direction that it's been moving for the last 5 decades.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
George.
you, everyone.
I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
moderation. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.